Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the last 7 days. We are diving into aerospace. I'm Brian Spellman.
And I'm Andrew Sparrow. So, coming up, Safran sees continuing supply chain pressures
Huge demand for new aircraft in China.
and what digitalization means for Gulfstream.
Space factory denied re-entry.
Inside that delicate art of maintaining America's aging nuclear weapons.
And OSIRIS-REx brings back asteroid samples.
Starting up, Brian, what we got first?
Well, first off, we have an intro video that should have played right there.
I love that.
This is the joy of a live show when stuff goes exactly as planned. So we're talking about
100%.
Safran CEO is seeing supply chain pressure through 2024. The global aerospace supply chains will remain under pressure throughout the entire 2024. We remain in a difficult situation with the supply chain. The problems are not solved yet, is what the Safran has said. Safran co-produces with General Electric GEN the widely used LEAP engine for medium haul jetliners and is also one of the world's largest suppliers of their aeronautical equipment. The pressure is particularly severe on titanium and steel supplies, contributing to inflation in the sector. They also talked about castings and forgings, but said in a recent worldwide shortage of computer chips has eased considerably. There's difficulties in recruiting following a wave of early retirements during the pandemic, but we're hoping that things might turn around towards the end of the year.
So I got to come in here because this is, to me, it's all about product life cycle optimization. Supply chain. For a start, we need to get in supply chains, give them a little bit of intelligence so they can forecast demand, plan a little better. Maybe through design, they could start to look at material diversification, because we know there are problems with titanium and steel supplies right now. I mean, commodity products are really in heavy demand. So maybe there's alternatives that you can look back into. Better inventory management, better production scheduling, all of those kind of things that we're dealing with on a daily basis. Maybe that can make a bit of a difference to a Safran and the like. So I don't know. What do you think, Brian?
If only we had a show that took deep dives into this kind of stuff, looking at product lifecycle management in certain industries. We should put in a plug advertisement for that one. But yeah, I think that's great. Supply chain is everything that happens in the production of getting your particular product from concept out into the public use and beyond is handled by this thing. Let's call it a critical thread. So we will have to dive in.
Talking of which, I'm going to go Gulfstream. So what digital business acceleration means for Gulfstream's aerospace CIO. There was an interview done in the last 7 days, during which the CIO leadership live session brought on Cheryl Bunton, who's the senior VP and CIO of business jet aircraft manufacturer Gulfstream Aerospace. Detailed priorities and the detailed priorities surrounding digital business acceleration, IT's agility layer that they have in Gulfstream, and a culture that has been steeped in intentional progression. So during this interview, she talked of what they call the agility layer. That's where they come up with various ways of dispersing and collecting information for main people. It's essentially a cockpit that takes 8 disparate systems, pulls them all into a new digital front end, so people don't have to sign into all the different systems. It does this work behind the scenes that used to be very manual. So instead of printing a bunch of paper, let me say that again, instead of printing a bunch of paper and then writing all the part numbers and remembering the work instructions, you can now bring your laptop onto an aircraft being built, see it all there, and have the confidence to know that all of the information is correct. So when we talk about agility layer, it's important to understand that the underlying technology that this strategy equips and improves the entire shop floor as well. It then goes on to talk about digital thread, digital continuity. And I think it's fair to say that Gulfstream have been now for a number of years at the forefront of digital continuity, digital thread, model-based enterprise, great stuff that those guys are doing. And like working with them. Anyways,
Yeah,
over to you, Brian.
it's neat watching all of this evolve in front of us and seeing how we're being able to take new technology and prove
Yep.
that the whole, iPads, iPhones, tablets, all those kind of things, laptops aren't just for fun and games, but can also help with the PLM lifecycle.
100%.
And speaking with what's happening with some let's call it purchasing of life cycles here. China's Eastern Airlines has said it's going to buy another 100 C919 airplanes in a deal worth $10 billion. This comes 5 months after China passengers plane took its first flight with China Eastern. Boeing is still waiting to resume deliveries of its best-selling 737 MAX to Chinese airliners more than 4 years because they were halted after 2 deadly crashes. But now the company has been all but shut out of orders from Chinese carriers since 2017 amidst rising political and trade tensions between Beijing and Washington. We've talked about that on a few of our previous shows. China Eastern has said that the additional planes are going to add to its fleet at a time when air travel is seeing a strong recovery following 3 years of COVID curbs, which might be a little different than what we're experiencing here, where you can find full airplanes anywhere you travel in the US, but I don't know if we're actually recovering yet fully from those restrictions.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of a bit, all the aircraft are full, but maybe there's not enough staff because they weren't able to bring them all back after layoffs, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know, but they are full up over here, that's for sure. So.
And now we're going to be joined by one of our, let's call it aerospace. When you see his background, you'll know he is definitely an aerospace fanatic here. So we're just going to bring on Bruce. Hey, Bruce, welcome to the new show.
Greetings all from a windy London. How are you?
Doing good, Bruce. Looking good there. That looks like a big pepper mill you've got in the background in between a bunch of aircraft. Am I right or am I wrong?
You're very wrong, Andrew. It's just pleased to see you. It's a 17-pounder anti-tank shell. Goes off with a bang.
Okay. Yeah. Hopefully not soon.
So, Bruce, what news have you brought for us today?
Well, I come from a slightly weird perspective on the world of aerospace. So I've got a couple of stories which I think will be interesting and hopefully will resonate as well. So we'll kick off first with my headline, Space Factory Denied Re-Entry. What we're seeing increasingly now are small, self-contained satellites which actually create materials inside them. They do so because in the space atmosphere there's zero gravity, there's zero interference, and they can produce particularly pure items, be it pharmaceuticals or chips for manufacturing. However, the slight problem is they've got to come back at some point. At the beginning of this week, we saw a problem with Vander's space factory. Denied entry. And who'd have thought denied entry? Well, in fact, it was the US Air Force, effectively an astral version of the Californian Highway Patrol System. Was it a particularly busy day in space, or really an example where scheduling has been overtaken by real-life events? Was there a smarter way of doing things? Could they have modelled such delays in the first place so that Vander won't having to worry about having a little satellite tootling around for a couple more weeks? Now, this problem is only going to get worse and worse because where we stand at the moment, we've got about 2,500 satellites tootling around the Earth in orbit. This is going to increase over the next 10 years to around 18,000. So this is going to get increasingly more difficult and challenging and really strengthens the argument for very powerful predictive modeling platforms to do scheduling of re-entry and also for maintenance as well. So there's a whole conversation, Brian, to be had about this, and this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Interesting, Bruce. Did you say like Californian Highway Patrol?
Absolutely that. The well-known chip series from the 70s.
I'm going to say chips in space, that kind of thing, I guess.
Chips in space, exactly.
So I'm thinking if you've got all this 18,000, I think you said, satellites up there in space, they deteriorate, they need maintenance, or they break down. It's like driving down the 405 in LA with everything that breaks down still left at the side of the road, I guess. So boy, oh boy, that's debris in space, debris on the highway. It's going to be interesting.
Well, there's a little correction. That 18,000 figure, Andrew, is what it's projected to be in the next 10 years. But the point is, all this stuff is whizzing around, would be at the size of a packet of cigarettes or a dollar coin, or the size of a bus. It's going around at thousands of miles per hour. And if you hit it, it's a bad day in space.
Yep, you bet. So I suspect the reluctance of the US Air Force to bring them back in was more a safety issue than a air traffic control issue, but let's see.
Absolutely. Risk mitigation.
Yep, you got it.
So take us from space down to the Earth.
Well, this one is story which hopefully won't go off with a bang. We're talking about the aging US Defense Force warheads. Now, when we talk about aging, we're talking about the fissile material inside the warhead itself. And I'm sure there are lots of physics experts out there will tell you that the half-life of plutonium is 24,000 years. So what do we have to worry about? Well, it's not just necessarily the plutonium itself. It's all the cogs and springs and other things that help the missile ultimately go bang. And after being installed in their silos for the last 50 years, they're starting to get a bit itchy and a bit needing to be sorted out. Think of it as really trying to service a very clever and very deadly Swiss watch, where if something doesn't work, a spring doesn't work, then the whole mechanism itself won't actually be able to operate. And so the US government has set aside $750 billion to spend over the next 10 years in maintaining and replacing over 1,500 warheads. It's a hell of a lot of stuff to do properly. Now, interesting thing about this is as much a workforce planning problem as worrying about the fissile materials breaking down, because the guys and girls who actually do the servicing on these particular warheads, in a safe place, I should add, by the way, away from lit firelights and things like that, they have to have very specific skills. And one of the things they do when they go for the recruitment process, that's fascinating, they have to disassemble and reassemble a mechanical watch. And it's a pass or fail situation. If you pass the test and the watch works, you've got a job. What doesn't work, you can't go into disassembling and maintaining warheads. And what they've seen actually over the last couple of years is a 40% increase in the number of people who are working in these sectors.
Wow.
Incredible challenge ahead. But also, it's just one small part of a bigger planning problem, because you can repair a warhead, but does the warhead then fit perfectly well onto the launch device? And how does that fit into a much bigger system? So this is something which ain't going to go away, and hopefully it doesn't go off with a bang.
You've just, I mean, massive maintenance, repair and overhaul issue. I mean, just huge. But it's a really good analogy you use with the Swiss watch, because many years ago, Swiss watches, of course, and probably still some of them are handmade, done. There's no automation. Sounds like it's kind of go through a similar age life cycle whereby things will start to automate. You know, you've got things like, I think, a nose cone on a nuke. If it's got a scratch on it, you could hit the wrong city.
Hopefully it won't take off in the first place, Andrew, but that's a very valid point. An interesting thing which not many people do know on this, though, is that the lump of fissile material, which is called a pit, there's something for a pub quiz on a Saturday night, that material is actually molded by hand. So at the end of the day, we have these awfully powerful devices which can kill millions of people. And it's all based on somebody taking the equivalent of the nuclear potter's wheel and forging the core of the device. Quite scary.
Really?
But can I finish on
something a little more positive?
Well, I was going to say that it's Friday afternoon here in London. The sun will be setting in a couple of hours' time. But let's finish on a good news story.
Yeah,
so thank you very much. So 3 years ago, a little asteroid a very large asteroid, was visited by a little satellite called OSIRIS-X, and the whole object behind this was to try and capture some material from the surface of the asteroid to determine what the physical compounds were in the universe before we even were a wink of an eye. Okay. So OSIRIS-X collected this material off the surface of the asteroid and then started a bit of a long journey back, in fact 3 years, to return back into Earth orbit. Now if you think about it, I passed my maths O level, which is a UK exam for 16-year-olds, and that was hard enough. So to try and calculate the trajectory of this poor little thing coming back to the UK, absolutely boggling. But however, it managed to get that back. Now, what people don't often appreciate is that having travelled millions of miles across space, often the most tricky part is the last 30 seconds as it's passing through the Earth's atmosphere ready to land on Earth. Because there's no telecommunications, there's no signalling or telemetrics being sent back and received. And this is actually probably one of the greatest areas where all contact being lost. What can we do? So I'm positing the question out there. Is it better? Are there better ways in which we can actually model how this missing 30-second gap is filled, and to ensure that things don't go wrong and the work of OSIRIS-REx and its other satellites can continue to be better? Let me know your thoughts.
I agree.
Yeah, let us know the thoughts in the comments below. And this was I just want to say, Bruce, thanks for joining us to tell us. This was an exciting and fast-paced, great discussion from you, filled with a whole lot of info. So we look forward to you joining us next week to tell us more about aerospace.
Last 7 days, A&D. Thanks, Bruce. Have a great weekend. Enjoy drinking time in London.
Light the blue touch paper and retire to a safe distance.
Thanks, everybody.
Done.